Hi, welcome back to another week of little bits of information and helpful tips for working with English learners in your classroom. This week we're going to focus on the newcomers. Now, newcomers can be of any proficiency level. That's something that's often confusing or misleading. Newcomers really refers to the time frame, so students within their first year or so in the country. Newcomers tend to also be beginning English learners, but not always. We do get plenty of newcomers who have some English background. So let's talk about those new students who have low English proficiency levels, beginners. Let's say you're level 1, level 2. They might not understand anything that you're saying yet, or they might get the gist and the basics, but they're still trying to figure it out. So when we walk into the classroom or we get the new student and our heart goes out, we're like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to make this better. I want the student to feel welcome. I want to be a great teacher. I want to help you. But we just stare at each other and we don't communicate. So we put together a list of 9 tips. 9 tips to help you with your new students who are beginning English proficiency. All right, so step 1, automatically just smile, right? Body language speaks 1,000 words. So if you smile, if you say good morning, if you say hello, if you say, you know, I'm happy you're here. Thanks for coming. We're glad to have you. You know, come on in, whatever you say, even if they don't understand the words, they understand the smile and the gestures, and they understand that you're happy they're there. And that will take a load of anxiety off a student from the get-go. So remember, they're kids just like all your other kids. So just don't be afraid of the communication barrier. Just put yourself out there, put a smile on your face, and say, glad you're here. Number 2, if you can, find a buddy. Now, of course, a lot of us already know that you want to look for a buddy that speaks the same native language or speaks the same language as your student. So if you have Spanish speaker, or if you have a new Haitian Creole speaker and you have other students in the class who speak the same language, of course, they'd make great buddies. But a buddy doesn't always have to speak the same language. Sometimes your buddy is just somebody who's a kind heart. Right? Who's patient, who's nurturing, you know, that motherly student or that guy who's the buddy to everybody. Somebody who isn't intimidated by the language or culture differences, but just embraces another student and says, you're my friend, again with the smile, come sit by me, and has the patience to point and gesture and redirect and make it happen. Same language, wonderful. Nobody who speaks the same language, doesn't matter. You can still make it work. Just find a kind heart to be that buddy. Including your student is crucial. So our teacher hearts sometimes lead us to want to protect students from things that are uncomfortable, or, oh, they're not going to understand the science lessons. So I'm going to put you on the computer. You love this program, it's a great website, you know, you'll get some beginning English and it's perfect time for that because you won't understand this math lesson or this science lesson. Let's try to avoid that as much as possible. We want to include the student, even if they don't understand what's going on, even if they're only getting 2% of what's happening. It's including a student and, again, making them feel part of the group, making them feel valued, that they have something to offer. And you'd be amazed at how much language is absorbed just by watching and listening and taking in the world around you. There are students and you as the teacher who are gesturing, you're pointing to things, you're holding up objects. They're going to follow a lot more than you think. Now, if they're shutting down, if you see emotional reactions, again, that body language, that smiling, those buddies are perfect there. But make sure you're including them. Even if they can't understand the read aloud, let them listen. Being exposed and part of the group and feeling a need to communicate are going to make that language come faster, right? So bring them on in. Number 4, providing pictures and labels as much as possible. Make everything as visual as possible. You have to have as many pictures, objects, manipulatives, video, acting things out, being silly in front of the class. You know, as teachers, we make fools of ourselves on a regular basis in front of children. All of those things are well worth the time it takes to pull up a few pictures in an internet search and show real examples of what you're talking about. It will help the comprehension of all the students in your classroom, but it'll be crucial for your beginning English learners to hang in there with you and at least pick up the big ideas along the way. All right, tip number 5. You want to do a little bit of research ahead of time and connect yourself with support services in the community. So find out for your school, do you have access to a live interpreter, a person who will come in and do a parent meeting with you or a parent-teacher conference? Do you have a phone system where you can do a 3-way call with a parent and an interpreter, or even with the student and an interpreter? Because sometimes there are cultural differences and expectations in the classrooms, and you might have something that looks like a behavior issue going on. And usually a quick call with an interpreter and a parent, or an interpreter with the student, to explain, look, this is what I need you to do, this is where the problem is, and you can fix it up pretty quickly. You also want to look at what's out there and be prepared. Are there services in the area for families who are adjusting to a new culture? Are there medical centers that have interpreters? Are there social workers who speak other languages? Where are services for students if they need clothes or if they need help with school supplies? What psychologists in the area speak other languages? Just really get familiar with your resources out there. Are there after-school clubs? Are there English classes at a church or library? So that as you get new students, you can help point the family in the direction of services that will help them and be a little bit more proactive about that. Okay, tip number 6, involve the family. It's hard at first when you're teaching and you have students from different cultures and you may not have experienced many different cultures yourself. And it's intimidating at first when you are meeting adults who are from other cultures and speak different languages. Some people embrace that and dive right in, and others hold back a little and feel uncomfortable. And both are very natural depending on personalities. We're all a little different. But do what you can to involve the families early. Same thing, smile, welcome them. I'm glad you're here. You know, I'm glad your daughter is here. I'm glad your son is here. It's good to see you. Thanks for coming. Making that phone call with the interpreter right up front to say, you know, we might have some communication problems, but here's what I suggest. If you need me, this is what I want you to do. If I need you, this is what I'm going to do. And just build that bridge. Reach out to any family involvement or parent liaison specialists in your school or district. Get some tips for the various cultures that are included in your classroom, because every culture has a different approach. So the more you can become familiar with it, the better. Tip number 7, get familiar with the language development process. So whether it's through taking a course or sitting down with a language acquisition ESL teacher specialist in your school or area, ask them to explain those levels, explain the process. What is typical growth? What's expected? How do I know when students are moving from one level to the next? How do I know what are reasonable expectations based on their current proficiency levels? The more you can know and understand what those levels mean, and I would suggest looking up WIDA can-do descriptors, WIDA performance definitions, And if you're in a non-WIDA state, you have level descriptors out there, and you have explanations of what those different levels mean. So get familiar with that and understand where your students are developmentally, because that will really help you plan for them down the road. And it will also save you time by not differentiating or creating materials that you don't need because your students have passed that point, or they're not even near that point yet. So it'll really help you fine-tune and save yourself some time. Tip number 8, back to that idea of buddies and friends. You could have some kind of buddy training where you get students together, maybe with a school counselor, school social worker, or teachers, and have a group that meets as a lunch bunch or meets at recess or something like that, and really teach students, like, this is what a good buddy does. These are our new student guides. This is how I want you to welcome a student. This is what we do when a student is confused. This is what we're looking for. We're looking for our friends, our classmates who might be by themselves. And when you see someone by themselves, here are some things you can say or do to help bring them in and make them feel included. So some buddy training would be an awesome help. And then you can kind of rotate those responsibilities so that everybody is building community, but you're not distracting one student all day from their work, that you can take turns taking care of each other. So my last tip for now, it could go on for a million, but tip number 9 would be to reach out to your community and find some volunteers. You might have adults in the area who speak the languages of the children in your classroom. You might have adults that have been in the country longer and have a better understanding of where the cultural and language confusions happen for their community. And they could be great mentors for your student and also for your parents. So reach out. Do you have a volunteer in the community, even if English is their only language and they just want to be helpful, to come in and do flashcards with a student, or practice new vocabulary, or just be a speaking partner and tell me about your day? I'm sure a lot of students in your classroom would love to have an adult to talk to for a few minutes a day. So reach out to people in your community. There are a lot of folks out there who have free time in their day who just don't know you need them. So invite them in, read a book to a group, work with a small group, do some art, whatever it is. But the more interaction, the better. Those are my 9 tips for right now to get you started with your new beginning English learners in your classroom. And it really is one of the most rewarding things as a teacher, in my opinion, is when you get students at this stage and they just so confused and so willing and so concerned about what's happening. And then by winter break, by second semester, you'll see a world of difference. They grow so fast. They absorb everything. And by the end of the year, you'll think, wow, remember back when you couldn't even tell me your name? Like, those are great moments. So save something, take a couple videos, record a couple samples. It's really fun to go back and show them how their language has grown over the year. So I hope these tips help get you started feeling more comfortable and more having more control or influence over the experience of your new students in your classroom. Thank you for taking such good care of them, and we'll be back next week with some more information to help you with your English learners.